Oh, I get to do one about a Red Bull Salzburg player. Oh, this is what dreams are made of. This is what the shirt was bought for. These things are what I personally live for. That when we get linked to players from Red Bull Salzburg, it gives me an excuse to pull the shirt out, and I'm not embarrassed to do so. I love them. So let's move forward and talk about Enock and Mwepu. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Tactical Breakdown. I nearly forgot then what it was called, our Tactical Breakdown series, one of our most favourite and beloved series on the channel, where we look at the players that Arsenal have been linked to, analyse them in an analytical and statistical way, and then look ahead at what they might do at Arsenal with the help of some expert insight. And today is no different, as I said already. We're talking about today Enock and Mwepu, who is the Zambian midfielder for Red Bull Salzburg, as you can see from my beautiful shirts that I have adorned myself with. Speaking of people adorning themselves with fantastic footballing shirts, let's jump straight into the video and talk to my guest, Tom Midler from the Other Bundesliga podcast. He is going to entertain and educate us everything that we need to know about Mwepu and get you guys up to speed regarding the 23-year-old.
Hi everyone, Happy New Year. It's Tom here from the Other Bundesliga, and I'm here to talk about Enock and Mwepu. I should stress that I'm a neutral Austrian football journalist, but I don't get to wear these very often, and as I know, Tom loves a good Red Bull shirt. Here's the Red Bull Salzburg number from a couple of seasons ago, their away shirt. But yeah, Enock and Mwepu, well worth talking about. Could be the next one from Salzburg to make the move away. It would be nice if one of these players finally did end up at the Gunners. I've been on here a few times to talk about potential transfers, and Arsenal haven't managed to hit the jackpot yet and actually get in there and win one of them. But Mwepu might change that. Who knows? So Enock Mwepu is a Zambian holding midfielder. That's his main role at Red Bull Salzburg. He has a great relationship with international and club teammate Patson Daka, of course, another player rumoured to be on the way out of Salzburg fairly soon. They could be two of the next ones to leave for sure. But he does sometimes play on the wings, Mwepu, but really his main role is that holding midfield position. So what he does, I mean, he's occasionally deployed as a box-to-box midfielder as well. He's definitely got the skills to his game to do that. But in his role as a holding midfielder, what's really good about Mwepu and the way he fits in at Salzburg is that he's a leader in terms of this counter-pressing, winning the ball back. He closes opponents down. He gives them no space. He just smothers players in the midfield. And that really plays so well into the Red Bull Salzburg philosophy and system. He fits it like a dream. So in many ways, that's brought comparisons with Patrick Vieira, of course. A great name to bring up when you're talking to Arsenal fans, no doubt about that. I mean, he hasn't got the same level of aggression to his game yet, but it's something that he's actually alluded to himself. You know, people have brought up the comparison with Mwepu and Vieira, and he said himself, you know, he's maybe trying to work on that because at the moment he's a friendly face. He's a really nice guy and a friendly guy, and perhaps doesn't have that same that same sort of ruthless streak that your Vieira types do, and some of these midfielders. You know, when you look back sort of 10, 15 years and you look back to the Premier League and you think of, these sort of tough tackling, tough characters. And Mwepu's got a lot of skills, but he doesn't really bring that aspect yet. But he's only 23, plays much more like a veteran, feels like a player who's been around a lot longer at Salzburg. That says a lot about how his standing is in this Salzburg team. So he's got plenty of years left to develop, and definitely he's identified that himself as something that he wants to add to his game too. So definitely a good chance for him to get better and get tougher as he goes on. For now, he's doing really well, like I said, with just winning the ball back and his vision. You know, his nickname is the computer, and that says a lot about his reading of the game. You know, he's just always there. His vision is great. His awareness is great. His awareness of teammates' movements is brilliant. And although he goes for some very high-risk passes, which does mean that he gives the ball away a lot, what he tends to do is win it back and then look for a distribution route forward, which fits in perfectly with Salzburg's system. And quite often, he'll give the ball away a couple of times on difficult passes, but then once he gets one right, he's going to put opponents further forward into absolutely brilliant goal-scoring positions. So he gets maybe not as many assists as he deserves, because he's actually maybe the second player, the second assist rather than the actual final pass. He got 7 assists last season, 5 goals. He's on course to beat that this year. And I think a key indicator of good players in the Austrian Bundesliga is that he's also replicated that kind of form in the Champions League. It's a really good effort from Enock Mwepu. Rumour has it that the scouts originally went over to sign Patson Daka, and they were so impressed by Enock Mwepu that they brought him as well. So he's sort of impressed against the odds, I suppose, in Salzburg. And even at the moment, he was overshadowed a little bit by Xaver Schlager, and Antoine Berned was brought in as the holding midfielder from Paris Saint-Germain not too long ago, but injuries to Berned and then the departure of Samaseku and Schlager in Salzburg's midfield. They've already gone on the production line, they've been sold on, and that meant Mwepu's had his chance, and he's absolutely seized it. He's become a really key member of this Salzburg midfield. They'd miss him massively if he left. As I've mentioned several times, he's integral to the system with the kind of play style that he's got. He's earned the trust of former manager Marco Rosa and now Jesse Marsch as well. And probably he's available for a relatively modest figure, as most Salzburg players are compared to players from other leagues. As I mentioned, Daka was perhaps the target even when they signed Mwepu, so his release clause is not thought to be particularly high. I've heard rumours of about 12 million. So he probably would be available for under 20 million if somebody was getting really serious about making a move for him. So why not? Why don't Arsenal do it this time? Why not? Hopefully we'll see him make the move. It'll be good for the Gunners and good for Enock Mwepu as well. Potentially in a few years, the next Patrick Vieira, ? I'll definitely finish with that because you never know. But he's showing some really good signs in Austria and would be an exciting signing if he can be prized away from Salzburg.
Thank you, Tom, for that expert insight and fantastic shirt, I should add. They do produce a fair few good shirts. I'm just going to show you the other one that I do own, which is the blue one, an away shirt from a few years ago with Jonathan Soriano on the back, a prolific Spanish goal scorer for them. Spaniards and Austrian team together. It's like the perfect Tom combo. But it's great insight there from Tom to find out a lot more about Mwepu. I want to touch on something before we go into the graphics and the statistics and get some of your questions at the end of the video. But what I want to touch on briefly, because I know it might come up later, is that the fact he's 23 years old now, and I know that a lot of people associate kind of Red Bull Salzburg with youngsters, and if he's 23 now and he's not made that move, I want to address that quickly. What I would say is that he's moved to Salzburg 3-4 years ago, and so he was only 19-20 when he arrived. So he's had that time to develop and grow into the player that he is now. So don't let his age being 23, which is still incredibly young, put you off him as a signing. I just wanted to address that before we go into the next stage of the video, which is talking about the graphics and the position of the player. So if we have a look on the screen, you should be able to see the heat map of Mwepu. He is a defensive midfielder, but as you can see there, he does progress into the opposition's half quite intensively. This is in part down to the team that he plays for in Salzburg, are a very dominant side in the Austrian Bundesliga. But this heat map is still taken from across the whole season, in which he's played against several top teams in the Champions League. And I'm going to talk about that specifically in a second. He does skew towards the right and has actually played as a right mid hand side should he need to be used there, and I'll come on to some of the impacts that has on how he plays defensively. If we look at kind of his duels, these are the duels that he's winning, and these 4 games, you've got the 2 games on the left, which are against Bayern Munich, away on the left and home on the right. I don't know why I did that. And then the 2 on the right-hand side are, again, away and home, but against Atletico Madrid. So the 4 games you can see there are for against Bayern on the left and Atletico Madrid on the right. And where he's winning those duels are all on that right-hand out to that right-hand side where he's winning those duels or trying to make those duels. And what I want to show you is the comparison between the right-sided defensive centre midfielder that he is in comparison to what we have which is usually either Mohamed Elneny or Dani Ceballos, because either Granit Xhaka or Partey, when he's fit, do play on the left-hand side. Partey can play on the right, and I expect him to play on the right next to Granit Xhaka, but Partey can play on the left very comfortably. But what we have right now with Partey out is Elneny and Dani Ceballos. Now, I want to show you two of the games that we've had that we've done quite well in this season. On the left-hand side, what we've got is Mohamed Elneny, and these are the two games on the left, Mohamed Elneny, that he's played in the last 90 minutes. And on the right-hand side, we've got the performances of Dani Ceballos in his last two full 90-minute performances in the League and League Cup. So I think the right-hand side one is against Manchester City for Dani Ceballos. If you go and click the link in the description to the article I've written, there's a lot more information and breakdown on these graphics that I do in the article. So feel free to click that link and have a discussion about that. But what you hopefully can see is the huge difference in what our current right-hand side centre defensive midfielders or just right centre midfielders are doing in comparison to Mwepu. I'll go back again. Look at the skewedness to the right-hand side for Mwepu, which you can see now, compared to how spread out the likes of Dani Ceballos and Mohamed Elneny are attempting duels for Arsenal at the moment. It's just incredibly different. It's so stark in comparison. And that's good in a sense that if Mwepu was to sign, I'll throw his duels up just so I'm talking over them. If we was to sign Mwepu, what we struggle with on our right-hand side is Hector Bellerin pushing up the other end of the pitch and leaving Rob Holding or whoever the right centre-back is really exposed. What Mwepu does is that he takes the ball and he wins it back on the right-hand side and he shields the right back. And the right back for Red Bull Salzburg is Christensen, who actually is a very good right back. I believe he's Danish and someone that we've been linked to. I believe if you've watched Tifo's Sensible Transfers, we were actually linked with Christensen to be a possible replacement or upgrade on Bellerin. But he does this role excellently for an attacking fullback and protects them and wins the ball back. And not only that, he wins the ball back in the opposition's half a lot against both. And again, these sides that he's playing against are against Atletico Madrid and Bayern Munich. There are more, as I've said, information about these graphics in the link in the description to the article that I wrote over on 101 Great Goals. So let's actually look at some of the graphics of him in action and what he does best and how he is best used on the pitch. Closing down for Carrasco in this case against Atletico Madrid, winning the ball back very, very comfortably and timing his challenge well. This one against Bayern Munich, again out on that right-hand side, you'll see him where he wins these balls. He wins them as in with the Ferreira Carrasco in his own half here. And against Bayern Munich, he's winning it high up the pitch when the ball is played to Kingsley Coman on Bayern's left-hand side, Salzburg's right. He gets in, out-muscles the young Frenchman very easily, wins it back, and then plays the ball forward, which is really a positive thing. He's a progressive player. He's not negative. He wants to keep moving the ball forwards, which is something that Arsenal need from their deeper midfielders. Another one here, ball is played across again to Kingsley Coman, and Mwepu comes in, takes the ball off him very, very comfortably. And Coman is not an easy player to dispossess, very tricky, and yet the Zambian midfielder does it expertly. This one in the Austrian Bundesliga, just showing you some of his passing, playing between the lines. I know a lot of you will know his link with Patson Daka, the other Zambian in the Salzburg team, as a striker up top, playing the ball in behind for him to find in between the defensive lines. As Tom said, he does like to try these risky passes. Sometimes they don't come off, but he recovers well. We'll show some of that in the statistics when we get onto them. The ball is played through here to Koita, who's another young striker that's very highly rated at Salzburg. Against Atletico Madrid in Salzburg, gets him into a good position, but the shot from Koita goes straight at Jan Oblak in this example. Another one against Bayern Munich on the counter-attack, this time in the central part of the pitch. He spots the run of Noah Okafor, another fantastically named player, Switzerland youngster, playing that ball through the defensive line, splits the Bayern defence and gets Okafor through on goal. He again does not take this opportunity, but can you just imagine for a second Mwepu playing this type of ball through to an Aubameyang to run through on? You'd expect the Gabonese forward to be doing a much better than these youngsters like Okafor in this situation. There is a lot of potential with this. This is the last passing example I'm going to show you, and it's just for fun because it's a 1-2 with Koita that he back heels through the defensive line and plays in Koita for a chance at goal. He's got flair, he's got technical ability to him, and he's just a really kind of cool player to watch. And he's someone that I'm very excited about if Arsenal were to take the plunge and go in for him. Let's go and have a look at some of his statistics, and then we'll get to, of course, your questions. So I'm going to zoom in so hopefully you can see the statistics a little bit better on the screen. On Wyscout, of course, as always, look at his defensive side of his game first. This is for the 2020-21 season. Let me just go to all. Actually, no, let's stick with Champions League, because I know that what I don't want to achieve is obviously you thinking that he's playing in the Austrian Bundesliga, and that is obviously a league that Salzburg dominate and do really well at. So let's have a look specifically League in a tough group with Lokomotiv Moscow, Bayern Munich and Atletico Madrid. So this season, what he managed to achieve was a 54% duel success rate, and he was trying to attempt over 11 duels per game, which is an incredibly high amount of duels for a player to be doing, even for a player in his position. And winning more than 50% of them is strong. Losses to recovery ratio, he does lose the ball a lot. Like Tom talked about that in his insight. He tries these adventurous passes, which often makes him lose possession, but he recovers really well. He's nearly got 10 odd recoveries in each game, which is excellent. And 50.8% of those are being done in the opposition half, which is incredibly good for a counter-attacking style team, which Arsenal can use really well. Nearly 5 interceptions, which is excellent. 3.56 loose ball duels. You remember how much Thomas Partey has changed us with how he intercepts the ball exceptionally well. If we could add another player of his kind of level, but just maybe to a lesser extent, of course, with Mwepu, it just, the mind boggles at the potential of that midfield partnership. It really does. Let's have a look at his passing then, as we talked about that briefly. 81.7% accuracy in general across the board is not amazing. It's not even great. It's okay. It's an okay pass percentage accuracy. But as we talked about, and if you have missed it, scroll back and listen to Tom Midler talking about this. He tries adventurous passes. And if you can look at that from the pass into the final third, he's attempted nearly 6 of them on average per game. He attempts nearly 3 passes into the penalty box per game. Forward to backward pass ratio is 13 to 9. And I think when you look at that kind of progressive way that he wants to play, he does spray the ball. You expect that from your deeper midfielders, playing it out to the wide areas. So there is quite a bit of sideways passing when it does come to a player playing in that position. That's very normal. But 13 forward passes in comparison to just under 10 backward passes. The forward passes are much less accurate because he's an adventurous player. You'd hope that it's something that would develop, something that he gets better, and something with the movement of our players, if we can get them working as such. But the likes of Bukayo Saka, Lacazette and Aubameyang ahead of him, hopefully they would provide him with the options where his passing would improve as he develops at Arsenal. Really positive stuff there. I mean, we can have a look at his attacking side of things, where he's taken his very shots from. When he does like a couple of shots from outside the box, which is absolutely fine. You may have seen a shot in the Champions League this season, which was an absolute stunner of an effort, which I've not seen a harder struck shot in quite a while from outside the box. But again, these are all Champions League statistics. You could have a look at the Austrian Bundesliga one, but I think it would skew very much in his favour, and I want to be as critical as possible about a player that I quite like. Let's jump into the chat box then. It's your opportunity to ask questions, if you have any, about him. I see a lot of people asking about Solomon from Shakhtar Donetsk. Wait and hold your questions until tomorrow, because fingers crossed there'll be a tactical breakdown on Solomon coming out tomorrow afternoon. So just chill on the questions regarding Solomon. Let's scroll up and see what some of you guys are saying on the position. Christopher Fung says, is it more important to find a centre mid like Mwepu or Bissouma, or a creative centre mid to rotate with Emile Smith-Rowe? It's a really good question, Chris, because ultimately the answer it's too tough to call an answer to this, because I think that if Arsenal were to add the Mwepu, the Bissouma type signing, it would kind of complete that centre midfield deep role. We might need to add more in terms of depth, but that starting deep position, Mwepu or Bissouma next to a Partey, is really strong. But then to put all of our hope on Emile Smith-Rowe, knowing his injuries, knowing the COVID situation, that worries me. And that makes me think that we need to ensure that we've got backup to him, because we've got more depth in that centre midfield position than we do in the creative midfield position. I think if you were saying in January, what should we go for? I think you prioritise the creative attacking player, and that's why I'm hoping this Buendia news is fairly positive, and we do in fact formalise our interest with a bid. And then in the summer, we can focus on who we might need to buy in this central midfield position. What I do know is that the club know that this is a position they need to target. It's a position that needs upgrading. It's a position that will be looked at with Danny Ceballos' loan running out, and with El Neni having just a year left on his deal, and with Willock kind of failing to show that he is going to be the guy that moves forward. Osman says, Enock and Mwepu sounds like another Thomas Partey. We don't need him. We should instead focus on a Toyin Coop miners. Partey can play on the right, Toyin on the left of the pivot. You know, if I ever thought the day would come where Arsenal fans turn around and said, we don't need another Thomas Partey, I mean, what dreamland am I living in? I'd take two Thomas Parteys all day long playing next to each other. I think it's a position where people kind of forget that if you've got two players of a similar skill set playing in a double pivot, it's not too much of a problem. It's not like you're playing with... It's a weird even kind of concept to consider, because you look at positions on the pitch that kind of pair centre-backs, wingers, centre midfielders. Just because you've got two players that might be similar to each other does not mean that it's a bad thing at all. I mean, centre-back specifically, you want two centre-backs that are solid and that can be ball-playing centre-backs. I heard someone say to me that you don't want two ball-playing centre. Why not? Why don't you want two ball? Surely you want the best distribution from both of your centre-backs that can also defend really well. That's what you want. And with Mwepu or with Bissouma alongside a Partey, I think that combination works excellently well. It's defensively solid, it's good in progression, it's good at winning the ball back, and it protects the fullback areas. And I think that's something that we have lacked with our centre midfielders. So I certainly believe that that is not the case, and I would certainly not buy into them being too similar for us to buy them. Tyree says, do you think we need a more creative, deeper midfielder, or do you think Partey will be able to be progressive? Again, it kind of links into that thing we just talked about there, Tyrese. If you watched a lot of the videos that I did during the summer on Thomas Partey, I talked about how Thomas Partey can be creative, not in the conventional sense of playing the number 10 passes, but just in the way that he progresses the ball from the defensive third of the pitch into the final third, and does that exceptionally well. And Mwepu can do that to a lesser extent, but he does it more through passing than he does travelling with the ball. So it is a slightly different player to Partey, and hopefully one that would definitely combat him. Yosef says, Tom, would it not be difficult to have too many key players being African? When the Cup of Nations comes along, we will lose most of them. Yosef, it's a good point. It's one that it should definitely not be undersold in any way. There is a 2022 delayed Cup of Nations coming up. Zambia are bottom of their group, if my memory serves me. I think they've played 4 games so far and they're currently bottom. So I don't know if Zambia will be going through or not. But it is one of those things where you have to turn around and say that hopefully you have got enough depth in the squad and enough youngsters as well that you have that cover. But there's plenty of sides throughout Europe that have quite a lot of African players. Red Bull Salzburg themselves have kind of got that African market down. It's not something that we can exploit because of work permit issues, but it's something that Austrian teams certainly can. So I don't think it's too much of an issue, because I'm hoping that the team would have enough depth in it to deal with that scenario. But I understand that losing both Partey and potentially an Mwepu as well, or a Bissouma, would be a problem for many people. But I think it's something that you need to look at in terms of the squad depth and covering those areas. Let's see what other people are saying. Lewis Kiriakou says, I agree about 2 good all-rounders in centre midfield. Parla sometimes partnered Vieira and both got stuck in, and deceptively talented forward. Going forwards, would be up for Mwepu. Good to hear, Lewis, and a nice kind of assessment of that situation. Eusebius says, what position after Cam does Arsenal need to strengthen? Arguably goalkeeper, because our goalkeeping situation is very, very dodgy right now. F4 Freestyler says, who would you prefer, Bissouma or Mwepu? Also, do you think if we signed a Lamptey or Aarons or an Atal at Nice, who I think, to be fair, Atal is very much what I call a FIFA player. I understand that he is a very talented footballer still, but I think a lot of people kind of get obsessed with how good he is on a video game rather than actually watching him. I mean, for me, there's a kind of a reason that he's still at Nice and hasn't been kind of, pursued by a bigger club already. It's just my view. Or Emerson as a right back who's at Real Betis. Do you think our defence is much better, or do you feel we need another defender? In terms of your first question, F4, I would go with Bissouma if you were asking me about who I'd want, because I think Bissouma is, of course, a maturer player, a player that's already used to the rigours of the Premier League. If it wasn't, it's not my money. Of course, I don't have to worry about that specifically. It would cost significantly. I'm talking like 3 times the price of Mwepu, probably. But if it was to do with being a bit savvy in the market, being a little bit ahead of the game, then I'd go for Mwepu. But I think if you were saying which would you rather have, Basuma is, of course, the more favourable option of the two. Fellow says, Tom, can you do a technical breakdown on Matteo Guendouzi? Because I don't want to give up on him. If it comes to a point towards the end of the season, we do look at some of the players that have been sent out on loan, so that will definitely be something that we can look at. As Mayor Rom says, do you think Marcel Sabitzer, who of course is another player that's worn the colours of Red Bull Salzburg, but he didn't come through there, he was loaned from RB Leipzig, is a better version to complement Partey on a deep line, more versatile midfielder? No, because Marcel Sabitzer is more an advanced player. You don't play him next to a Partey. That's why I wouldn't play a Julian Brandt next to a Partey, even though some believe that he can play a deeper role, which he can, but I don't think you'd play him next to a Partey to play a deeper role. I think Partey is so progressive and so forward-thinking that it would leave you too exposed to play him next to a Julian Brandt or an Aouar, which I've seen other people say we could play in a deeper midfield number 8 type role. I don't think it would work personally. Mr. Joe Kerr says, seems like a good idea, but Basuma is still a better overall purchase with his Premier League experience, but he will cost multiple times more than what Mwepu would cost. Exactly. You're spot on, mate. 100%. I see a lot of questions coming on regarding other players. And so therefore I'm going to park those. And tomorrow at o'clock is, of course, our Let's Talk Arsenal show where we answer a lot more of your questions. Where I'll be joined by a guest. So look forward to that. I hope you've enjoyed today's video talking about Mwepu, breaking him down as a player. I hope you've enjoyed the insight from Tom Midley. You can check him and the guys out at the other Bundesliga or at Other Bundesliga and their podcast. So make sure you check those guys out. Drop a like on the video so you can let me know that you've enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel to get more of this analytical transfer Arsenal content in addition to all of our usual match reactions and match previews and everything else fun that we do here. It's been a pleasure to speak to you guys, as it always is. I'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.